Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. This is Preacher Moss. Of course, if you're looking at me at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock your time, it's time for the Shout Out Show. Let me, again, take some time. I want to actually thank everybody for tuning in. You can have other places you could be, and you spend this half hour, 25 minutes with me, listening to some of my beliefs, some of my thoughts. And I just want everybody to know that communication is a two-way street. So please feel compelled to use the comment section. That's for you. Your shout outs are important. I do try and post all of them. That's number one. Number two, I just want to spend just a little bit of time and make sure that we're appropriately making prayer for George Floyd and his family, the spirit of George Floyd. I'm around that same age, a little bit older, so I think it does resonate with me. Plus, the whole scope of something that I will be talking about today is a very serious subject. And I hope it doesn't get too dark. I don't think so. But I think we need to have this conversation because there's a very, very large mass movement to the idea of standing with our Black brothers and our Black sisters. While that is all well and good, I have to recognize and I have to actually remind us of something that Malcolm said when he left the Nation of Islam and he was doing his own organization. He said, you can support us, but you can't be in our group. We as African Americans have to find our way. And it's no disrespect to anybody out there, but supporting and being on the front line, that's beautiful. But the idea and the understanding of African American existence is something that we have to nuance. And we have to make some serious choices about how we see ourselves in America. We have to make some very serious choices and assessments as to how our condition is going to be. I literally said on one of the broadcasts that I recently did that I think there's merit in African Americans and African American Muslims as well, looking at the fact that we may have to separate ourselves. We may have to take this time to separate ourselves. We live with the idea that promises are going to be broken, and we make prayers for promises that are broken. When things happen to us, violence is acted against us. The nature of religion and spirituality says pray for the oppressors, and I do say pray for the oppressors. But at this point in time, in my heart, I feel as though we do need to separate. I'm not saying segregation, but there needs to be some space, and we need to evaluate things that affect us, and not through the prism of politics, not through the prism of culture, other people's culture, through our culture. We have to have a clear understanding of who we're going to be moving forward. Now, this is not controversial. This is intelligence. I have a thing. If you don't want to get the flu, you don't go around people who have the flu. If you don't want your clothes to smell like smoke, then you don't go around people that smoke. If you don't want to be involved in a drunk driving accident, then don't be around drunk drivers. Don't get into a car where a driver is drunk. This is the logic. America has us deluded to the fact that it is so important to be a part of the American dream, though it does not work for us, that we make excuses to exist and make excuses to exist. We make excuses to belong. We make excuses when we don't belong. And it also happens in the Muslim community. We make excuses for how we're treated in the Muslim community. We want to say, hey, people want us to say, hey, excuse this brother, sister, make 70 excuses for them. they're not making excuses for us, and I'm not making excuses either. There was something I wrote years ago as a part of a screenplay. Many of you may or may not know that I'm a diversity speaker. So my specialty is race in America, uh, race identity, politics, things of that nature. So I don't want you to think that I'm just pulling this out of the air, but I am looking at the human condition, and I get suspicious when people run to your rescue and they say we want to stand with you, because it makes me feel like you've been standing all along looking at what's going on. Right now it's great to support Black people because it's safe, because the penalty, the sacrifices are very small and minuscule because everybody's doing it. You know, I see young white ladies, 19 years old, running around with shirts on that said Black Lives Matter, and they don't love Black people. You don't know Black people like that. It happens in our own Muslim community. We talk about assalamu alaikum, brother, da da da, and I hear everything about the Prophet's last sermon, and no, Black is better than a white, and da da da. I'm like, listen, that's fine, but I'm living life where I see that it's not true. Stop giving me something you don't follow. It's disrespectful. We have this whole thing now of, what immigrant Muslim organizations should do to support Black Muslims. I'm like, you should have been doing it in the first place. Why do you need a directive? You have these things on social media, Blackout Tuesday. I'm not doing Blackout Tuesday. You know what? Because I got to be productive on Tuesday. Stop living your life by hashtags. You have people going to protest in their best Sunday suit, and they're taking selfies. That is not revolution. That is not productivity. That is grandstanding. You're not there for the cause. You're there because everyone else is there for the cause, and it's the hip thing to do. Let me tell you about racism in the United States. The toughest part about racism in the United States for African Americans and also Latinos is that you have to explain the lack of consideration, mercy, and compassion from people who keep telling you that you're equal. I wrote in a screenplay one time, and I stopped writing because it hurt me so bad. Because I thought at some point in time I might be in that situation having to explain to my child or my younger nephew or my younger niece what America is. And it opens with a mother and a child walking down a dark road. They don't have a car. It's a dusty, dark road, and it's at night, and they come around the corner, and they see a man hanging from a tree. And the child is in the early aspect of his own cognitive development. He doesn't understand these things. And they see a Black man hanging from a tree. And the child innocently asks the mother, "Mommy, why is that man hanging from the tree?" And the mother's response was, "He's a flag." He said, "What kind of flag?" She said, "He's a flag for injustice. He's a flag for lack of mercy. He's a flag for racism. He's a flag for broken promises. He's a flag for inspiration for those people who still want to live in spite of those things." And I thought when I wrote that I never want to make that. Today's talk is called God Bless a Child. Whether we want to admit it or not, doesn't matter what color you are, what denomination you are, Black, white, Latino, gay, lesbian, Jew, Gentile, Native American, at some point in time, you're either going to have to hear the talk or you're going to have to give the talk about racism in the United States. I never really had to hear the talk from my parents. My mother's from down south, Danville, Virginia. Danville, Virginia was on almost the Mason-Dixon line of North Carolina and Virginia. And it was horrible racism. And my uncle stayed there his whole life, and I wish he would have left. He was blackballed. He spent the twilight of his years driving back and forth to Washington, D.C. because he couldn't find work. He couldn't find work in Danville, Virginia because he got He tried to start a union. Okay, anybody else could start a union, but a black person started a union. White people didn't want him, and the black people didn't want him. Let's call it what it is. But the talk, when you talk about a child, think of the child I just told you. And the mother has to tell the man that's hanging from the tree, that dead black man, to her child that he's a flag. Is she right? Is she wrong? Metaphorically, she's right. Realistically, she can't tell that child this is what you're seeing. But it's not to say that the child doesn't register that. I sent out something on Facebook today to, I guess it was talking about, in some regards, how you talk to your children about race or racism in America. And it fudged around a lot of things. But I've seen racism in America. There were themes back in the day that resonated with me. There was a movie with Paul Winfield called Sounder. And really, the movie was about this black family down south who was struggling. Just like we're all struggling right now, trying to figure out where we're going to pay our bills and things like that. And I also want to give a quick shout out to people who want to support the show. I will, next time, I'll give you some information with support the show, because I really want to take this thing even bigger. I want to be able to do the shout out show from prisons. I want to do the shout out show from schools. We're going to take it on the road, inshallah, if that's Allah's will. But the talk is interesting because I saw the talk not happen in a movie called Sounder. And it was about a black family down south, as I said before, that was suffering. They were struggling. They were dealing with the ravages of race in a place and time. Like, we talk about George Floyd, and it's a horrific thing. But imagine if there's no protection of the law. So you're seeing George Floyd's every weekend. It's sport. Murdering black people used to be sport. It's sport. There were no cameras back then. My grandmother tells me about these things. My mother tells me about these things, how the police would just come get a black boy when you didn't see him anymore. Or there's an adage of the black boy that was in trouble, and the mother would send him out of town. So when the horde would come from him, he wouldn't be at the house. And that black mother would be having to stand there in front of these miscreants and explain that her boy left because she feared for the child's life. One of the hardest things that you're ever gonna have to do for a child, in some regards, you're gonna have to tell them, as much as I love you, as much as I protect you, you stay up nights doing what? Fearing for their lives. To go back to this movie Sounder, and I'm going to bring this up, it's interesting. Paul Winfield dealt with the fact that his family was starving. He didn't have work. And you're talking about maybe in the 30s. So, black life didn't matter. Black life didn't exist. So get off these stupid slogans. Black life didn't matter. Black life didn't exist. Black life was not on the books. Black life didn't have a legal precedent, brothers and sisters. And this man tried everything he could to feed his family. And finally he broke down, and I remember he stole a loaf of bread. And for that loaf of bread, they committed him to hard labor, a labor camp. But the star of the movie was the dog that followed him to the labor camp, got his ear shot off. And everybody rallied around the dog. And I'm like, what the hell did I just see? And they talked about the spirit and the loyalty of the dog, not the condition of the man who stole bread for his family and did hard time. As a teacher, I look at racism at specific levels. I look at an education system that does not work. It's not designed to work. People say, is it a pipeline to prison? Let me tell you a story. I one time had to attend a conference, a teacher conference. We used to have a teacher day off, like 1 or 2 days. and all you had to do was, you could lie about whether you went to a conference or not or something. And most of the time we did lie. But I had to go to one this particular time, and it was interesting because it was being held by a defense company. And I was like, this is interesting. It was well laid out. They had great food. I mean, and they were just talking about metrics and stuff. And what I realized was about 15 minutes to the conversation, I realized that they're having a conversation about prisons, brothers and sisters. And it's not about just prisons, it's about projecting the amount of prisons that they would be able to build in the next couple of years. And I'm like, this is weird for education. And as they further went along, the question was, how could they be so accurate in building prisons? I'm talking about 10, 15 years out. They knew how many prisons they needed to build. And it came out. The reason they were able to figure out how many prisons they needed, they were based on results from, wait for it, second and third grade reading equivalency tests. Reading equivalency tests, standardized tests. They're looking and they're doing samples from second and third graders, and they're realizing, probably understanding the scope of education that these children are receiving, they're actually able, my brothers and sisters, to figure out how many prisons they need to build. I wasn't a favorite teacher at my school. I'm gonna tell you why. I believed in the kids. I advocated for the kids. But more importantly, I was that kid. Hey, walaikum assalam. What's going on, Sister Layla? And Sister Sultana, my partner in crime. But I advocated, and you may not want to hear this, but you probably need to hear this. For anybody that sends their kids, particularly in the inner city, they send their kids to school in the inner city or a school that's underperforming. The most negative place in the entire school is the teacher's lounge. The teacher's lounge. And it's funny because teachers will talk around you because they think you're in a fraternity of teachers, not in a fraternity of humanity, fraternity of I'm here for these black kids. My story was I quit 2 good paying jobs in Washington, D.C. and moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to take a job that was $20,000 less than what I was making because I believed in the children. And it's a hard job. Kids come with a lot of issues, and they're not the issues, they're the parents' issues, they're social issues. And you have to fight, and you got to earn their trust. And you know why? You know why you got to fight and earn their trust? Because they already know about the talk. In second grade, first grade, they've been brutally introduced to the talk. And that talk is about racism. And it's interesting being in a room full of people, of non-blacks, talking about how they don't want to educate black children. Well, if that sounds, oh, preacher, out of order, out of pocket, I'm not. Look at your Department of Education. The Secretary of Education is a woman who never taught. She never sent her kids to public school. She's never been a professor. She has no credentials. She just got a bunch of money, and she is determining educational process for our children. That's why I would never send a child to public school right now because I know the intention of these people. They force teachers these days to teach to the test, not teach to the kids' particular ability, not teach to the kids' talents, not teach to the kids' inspiration. God bless the child that figures out that these people are not in my best interest. God bless the child that figures out I have to get out of here because this is not a winning situation. God bless the child that says, I don't trust anything that these people are telling me unless my mom or my daddy validate it. God bless the child that says, until they say what it is I'm dealing with, which is racism, I can't deal with them at all. Which brings me back to my point. I earlier said, in looking at the conditions of what is going on, and I don't mind saying it, we got to leave these people alone. Black folk, if you're listening, look, we've been giving it how long? We've been giving it a try. How many hundreds of years? This thing ain't gonna change. The heart of folks is not going to change. Yes, Sultana, God bless the child that has his own what? His own intellect, his own information, his own identity. Because if you don't have it, people are either going to give you one or they're going to take the one that you have. Am I saying everybody in society is bad? No, I'm not saying that. But there are enough bad people out there to make this a valid statement, that make this something that you have to consider. All my brothers and sisters at Black Masjids, I love you. I love you. But we need to take a stand. We cannot continue to sit back in the back seat and let people drive us to destinations that don't suit us. I'm not going to be the person that let somebody go up on stage and articulate my experience for a fundraiser anymore. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be the person that, we're going to come out and support you, but I'm going to take your pain and I'm going to turn it into something that's advantageous for me. Are you okay with it? It's not okay anymore. When you talk about racism in the United States with other cultures here in the United States, when they give their kids to talk about racism, I'm going to tell you some real talk. They don't tell them about racism, about themselves. They tell them about you, Black people. They tell you about you, my brothers and sisters. They say that's the cautionary tale over there. Don't be like those people like that. Don't speak up. Don't stand up. If they tell you to lay down, stay down. Don't be inspirational for the people that need the most help. Don't show up to help the poor, unless it's overseas. And I'm still dealing with that one. We've been dealing with institutional systemic racism for years. And I will call out every Muslim charitable organization. Call them out. Islamic Relief, Helping Hand, ISNA, Muslim Aid. I don't even care. I'll call you all out because the proof is in the pudding. Even Muslim children are standing here doing what? Having to wait for their parents to give them the talk. Or worse, the children have to turn around and tell mommy and daddy, don't worry about it. You don't have to tell me. I already know. I am not a pessimist. I'm not a pessimist, but I'm a realist. And this avant-garde, this flavor of the month, I guess, lack of a better word, solidarity. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. And you have to be able to say that. It may cost me work. I may not ever work again anyway, just with the COVID thing. They're talking about the economy might not be right till 2029. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to be true to what I've learned, and I'm going to be true to my teachers. I'm going to be true to the things that Imam Warthi Muhammad said. I'm going to be true to the things that Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, Honorable Louis Farrakhan. I'm going to be true to things that my comedy teacher, my spiritual comedy teacher, Dick Gregory, told me. And I'm not going to live a lie for people who live lies. So for some folks, let's be real. I might not be doing your events anymore because I don't trust you. See, it's a positional arrangement that we have. And there's a danger, too, for all you folks out here, Black, white, and anybody listening. There's a danger in here because you tend to start compartmentalizing things. The problem with the Muslim community is we compartmentalize behavior because we think it's going to get us what we want. It won't get you what you want. It's going to get you what you deserve. You can't cheat the system, brothers and sisters. If somebody tells you the alphabet, you can't take out random letters and think that it's really going to work. It doesn't work like that. The game is old school. I remember growing up, it's a cold game too. It's a cold game. So stop trying to warm it up. Stop trying to warm it up. That story I told you that I wanted to write about the little Black kid and the mother walking down a road, there's some things you need to listen to. Walking down the road, Black mother, Black boy, there's no father there. What's that tell you? What's that tell you? I'm giving you facts, folks. Facts. And they go around the road in 1920 or 1930. It's a period piece. And they look up there and they see a black man hanging. And a little boy at a young age go, "Mommy, why is that black man hanging from that tree?" And she says, "Oh, baby, he's a flag." In her own way, she was giving him the talk. We have to be cognizant of developing our own history, and we just can't do it around anymore. I can't do it around other people anymore because you're not feeling me. You don't really know where I'm coming from. It's like having a conversation with somebody and they tell you, "Yeah, I know what you're talking about." You don't know what I'm talking about. "Yeah, I get it." You don't know. You don't get it. That's being black in America right now. Everybody thinks they get it. Everybody thinks they understand. Well, I got news for you. You got black people that don't understand their damn selves. So stop going out here going, "You understand." Take those funky Black Lives Matter shirts off and say, "Guess what? I'm going to change black lives. I'm going to engage black lives." Because, until you do that, how you know it matters? Now, I'm going to go. And you may see me at a rally some point in time, or you may see me doing something like developing some kind of curriculum to save these kids out here. Because whether it's COVID, or whether it's riots, or whether it's George Floyd, here's the fact. Black community was suffering. We were suffering before this thing. This just gives us a bit of a respite. We could be angry, but we were suffering quietly in our houses and quietly in our communities, and we were dying, brothers and sisters. We were dying. So the next time you look at your young one and they have a smile, understand, take a picture of it. Because in some regards, life hasn't got to them yet. They haven't had to talk. And it's a damn shame we have to give them the talk, but that's how we protect our children. Because we live for our children to be safe. We live for our parents to be safe. We watch our parents stress over us because they wanted us to be safe. Now, real talk, I'm going to let it go. But I need you to start thinking about things strategically, brothers and sisters. If it ain't right, step to the side. Do we need to separate? In my opinion, yeah, because it ain't working. Everybody else separates. Marriages don't work. Friendships don't work. Why are we hanging on? This relationship don't work with America. I'm Preacher Moss. Have a blessed day. Allah is God. Keep it simple. Assalamu alaikum.